Hey everybody, we're back at it with the wheel and everything. You could probably tell that the acoustical qualities that I'm working with right now are better than the ones we had before. I've got the right microphone, I've got the right pop filter, I've got the right boom arm setup, everything just how I like it. Got my trusty mixer at my side. Everything is as it should be for audio. We're in the in-between place, in between where we are and where we are going to be eventually. In the city where we will be living and working now, but not in the house because we have to sell our house and then buy a house. It's a whole thing. Anyway. So I will still move again before the summer is through. So that's fun and exciting. Anyway, we'll try and stay on top of this channel as best we can in the interim. Because who knows what I'm teaching next year either. Like, I need to talk to someone and be like, what's my curricula? Do you have it? Can I have it? Anyway, regardless, let's spin this wheel and we shall find out what we're going to play right now at the very least. Sorry that I babbled for so long. Normally these are like 15 seconds. We're at a minute and a half. Sundered Eldritch edition. All right, I will be back when that is ready to play. Okay, so Sundered Eldritch edition, which is, I don't know what other editions there are. This is the one I have. This is the one that's on Steam, but it's also on other things as well. This game was released on the PS4, the Xbox, the Switch, and of course the PC in both Steam and I believe it's on Good Old Games. Great Old Games, GOG, which however you want that to be. Anyway, but yeah, it's on there too. And it comes to us, this was released in 2017, made by Thunder Lotus Games, which is actually important. You know, sometimes I'll tell you who made a game and it's like, I don't know, this is like their only game. You know, because I do go severely indie on this channel, like into games that are like, yeah, the developer quit after this and went back to their day job or whatever. A lot of those type of games in my collection. No, Thunder Lotus, makers of Jotun, which is a sadly underrated, undervalued game because it is beautiful. Amazing graphics, amazing story, amazing, like really, really good game. And does not get enough love. But the one that they made that did get enough love was Spiritfarer, which you probably heard of. Spiritfarer is very, very beloved, and I would have played it by now if it were not for the fact that it deals with some really heavy, it could be a very sad game, because of what you're doing in the game. It's all about death and stuff. And I just haven't been in an emotional space where I feel like I can play that game. Otherwise, I would have played it by now. Anyway, so Thunder Lotus, they've only made good games thus far. The first one was Jotun. The most recent one was Spiritfarer. They do have another one coming out next year because they tend to release games every, like 2-3 years, seems like. And they're really, really impressive games. This game is a bit of an interesting thing. It is a piece of emerging game genre shenaniganery known as a roguevania, which is a combination, obviously, of a roguelike and a Metroidvania. So it's got them roguelike elements in a Metroidvania shell. But like, you may be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, hold on. We just, like, there are the genre police out there, and their panties are still in a twist over whether or not, like, we just got them to accept Metroidvania as a thing. And, like, we're so close to getting them to accept roguelike. But yeah, then you're gonna come along and just like flip the thing and be like, it's a roguevania. Are we trying to kill the genre police is what I'm saying, I guess. Maybe we are, and maybe that's not necessarily wrong. You can feel about that however you like, especially if you are the genre police. Anyway, but yeah, this has that backtracking through previous areas using newly unlocked abilities that you got from beating bosses and collecting, in this version, Eldritch shards, which give you special unlockable abilities, sadly none of which you will see in the gameplay. I just started playing this game again. Like, I lost my original game save of it in a hard drive failure from the last time that we moved. Not this time, the time before. I had like 3 hard drives fail on the same computer. I had 3 hard drives in that computer and they all failed. And I had backups for 2 of them. So yeah, all of my game saves were sadly lost. You know, Skyrim game that I'd been playing since the very beginning, now gone forever. Anyway, so yeah, always back up your data. But yeah, I don't have the gameplay in which I played later into the game, because I have played this game and I've enjoyed this game. It's very good. It's very well crafted. And it doesn't make you don't feel like, sometimes when something's procedurally generated, you can just feel it, you know what I'm saying? Where it just feels a little like not quite designed the way that you would design it if you were like actually laying it out piece by piece. Yeah, it doesn't have that feel, and that's because, as far as I know, I don't know this for sure, this is my best guess, but this is also true of a little game called 20XDX, which is a Mega Man-ish, and there's a sequel, I think it's 30XDX is the sequel. I don't have it, I haven't played it yet. I'm still working on that original, because it's I have a hard time with it a little bit. Like, I am not great at Mega Man. I never have been. I never claimed to be. My son is actually much better at Mega Man than I am. But yeah, it's a super fun game. But as far as I can tell, it is made of these pre-designed level chunks that are then, you know, randomly put together. Like, think of them like tiles in Settlers of Catan, you know, or something, or what's that other board game? Think Brain. It won't think, sorry. Anyway, but you know, where you put it together and the terrain snaps together because there are interlocking, you know, there's an exit here and an enter here on the tile, you know, for a river or for a piece of land, and it just works. You can just snap them together and they all go together to make something. Anyway, that same generation is what is being used to make 20XDX a playable roguelike Metroidvania style. And it is also what it's like, it's what it feels like here in Sundered. So you get the feeling that the levels are designed even though they're kind of randomized. So it's randomized but smartly. It's both designed and randomized, so it feels more designed than it does randomized. Because if you're going to play Metroidvania, which means that you are going to do a lot of backtracking once you unlock new abilities, and you're going to go back and you're going to use those abilities to get into new areas and new rooms and find new things to do. Yeah, you want it to feel designed. You don't want it to feel like too random, because then you're going to feel like, how do I know that there is a way out of this? And this doesn't make sense. Why is this here? This obviously would seem to indicate, a passage or something, but it's not. And so why am I looking at this? You don't get that kind of feeling in the game. It feels designed, but also every time you die, it is randomized. And so you will come back with the same power-ups, the things that you got, not the temporary ones, but like the same character features that you unlocked, move sets and whatnot that you unlocked will remain with you the next time through. And so it becomes easier. It balances itself out in that way. So, if you had a really hard time here this time, well, you've unlocked this far. Maybe your next time through, it's going to be easier because you have a more powerful character than the last time you went through that same place. So, yeah, that is how that works. And it's a really smart way to put a game together. And this is, it technically, and I literally just debated someone on this yesterday, or was that earlier today? It might have been earlier today, about whether or not roguelite is a thing as opposed to roguelike, the L-I-T-E as opposed to the L-I-K-E, because the roguelite is supposedly like, if you keep progress, because in the original Rogue, there was no progress kept. It was just procedurally generated and permadeath. If you die, you die. And yeah, it just, there are people who don't like that aspect, and who like keeping some of the progress made as a means of balancing the game. And then there are purists who are like, well, that's not a thing. And meanwhile, Sundered, which is a great little game, a very unfortunately hidden gem of a game, goes unplayed and unloved because people can't get their crap together on whether or not it's even a thing that should be a thing, And so it drives me crazy, because let me just slight diatribe here for a second. I am a heavy metal fan. In addition to all the other things that I love, I also love like power pop, so like I'm very eclectic in my musical tastes. I have very broad tastes. I like a lot of things, but like I do love me some heavy metal. And what specifically do I like? Well, in addition to like the hair metal and the what is now called power metal or classic metal that was around when I was a youth, and it was so forbidden and intriguing and awesome to me at the time. I've also since become a big fan of doom and stoner metal. And, of course, stoner metal is like doom metal mixed with psychedelia, which is a fantastic combination. And here's the fun thing about it, is that there are people who will be like, oh, this album is more of a stoner metal album because it's got like a pot leaf on a cover, or it's got a song that's like, demon weed or something like that, and people will be like, okay, it's more of a, it's more of a stoner metal than it is a proper doom metal. But ultimately, who cares? It's just a way of filing things in a physical brick and mortar store or filing things in your iTunes. And guess what? If you get something, even if it comes to you from like, sources like Bandcamp or iTunes or whatever, like you can change the tags to say whatever you want. No one's gonna force you to use the genre name at all. It just exists as a way of describing what we feel is. And I feel like with this game and with games like it, people have gotten hung up on like, oh, well, roguelite and Metroidvania and blah, blah, blah. Like, don't hang yourself up too much on this, because like this game has a lot going for it. Okay. First of all, it's got a fully realized story. It does. It's got a whole story that's based in H.P. Lovecraftian lore, and that means that the game also has a fake video game language, which I love. I love a fake video game language, and the video game language is based loosely, because like it was never properly formalized, on the language that H.P. Lovecraft used in his stories. If you don't know Lovecraft, maybe you've heard of Cthulhu, his most popular creation. He was a writer of horror. People always compare him to Edgar Allan Poe, because Poe is the other, well-known horror author of a similar but not altogether same vein. And anyway, H.P. Lovecraft is much beloved, and I'm going to try not to mention the fact that he's a giant racist, and this is well known and well publicized. And it's problematic when you are approaching his works, and you just got to deal with it and be like, H.P. Lovecraft, he was what a writer, but man, was he a huge racist. Anyway. But yeah, so the game does have a really good story that has pre-existing lore that already appeals to people. So it should be a win on that account alone, because it does make effective use of the Lovecraftian lore. The gameplay is excellent. The controls are very easy to learn, simple, straightforward. The buttons do what you think they do. You know what I'm saying? And there's even little things that'll tell you like, oh, push this for that. And it tells you in game, here's how to do it. It teaches you to play the game as you're playing it, which is, I love it when a game does that. Like, don't bog me down in the lore. Like, let me experience it, and then don't lean on it too heavily. Anyway, the one downside is that I think it's called a finisher or finishing move, something like that. It's a really powerful move. It takes way too long to power it up, number one. And number two, it is way too easy to accidentally hit it. And, like in Streets of Rage 2, when you accidentally hit the button and that cop car shows up and shoots a bazooka, shoots those little mini missiles or whatever it is and knocks everybody out, except for you already cleared the screen and you just hit that button on accident, and now you're like, oh man, it totally wasted that. Anyway, yeah, it's got one of those in it, which is a little annoying. And also, like, enemies will generate randomly at random intervals, and it'll be swarms of them. But what makes it fun is that sometimes the game is about fighting off hordes of enemies, and sometimes the game is about exploration. And it's not always, obvious which part is about to be next. And so it kind of keeps you on your toes that way, and I like it. I like that, like, you can realize, like, oh, I've been exploring for like 10 minutes now and I haven't met a single enemy, and then all of a sudden, massive horde of enemies, and you're like, oh, I gotta kill all these guys, and then you're like, oh wait, what was I doing? Oh, that's right, exploring. So it's got a good balance of those two things. It feels nice. Anyway, It's got a beautiful art style, which, of course, Thunder Lotus is known for. All of their games are beautifully rendered. Has that sort of, hand-drawn quality to it that the other, Thunder Lotus games have, which I love. I love it. Anyway, so this game is a lot of fun to play. You put all of those things together, you stir them all up in a pot. It's got the roguelite, it's got the Metroidvania, it's got your procedural generation through pre-planned chunks, which fit together in interesting ways. But when you see those chunks again, you're going to be like, oh, that's right, I remember this chunk. So it feels both familiar and different at the same time. So no two playthroughs are exactly the same. It's really interesting. And I feel like this game has not gotten the respect that it deserves for how well it does all of the things that it does. Anyway, let me put a final score on it because I blathered long enough. And you're probably guessing it's going to be nice and high. You would be right about that. So, it should surprise no one that for Sundered Eldritch Edition, we are going 8 out of a possible 10 Mega Men. I mentioned Mega Man, and I love the sprite. That's why it's not really that much like Mega Man. But it is an excellent little game, underloved. Not enough people have talked about it. Not enough people have loved it. Not enough people have played it. And it'll probably be on sale in a couple of weeks when the Steam sale starts. And I will be sure to update you when that starts, let you know what's on sale. And hopefully this is with it. Hopefully a lot of y'all will be able to pick it up on the cheap because it is a really good game. Highly recommended. And yeah, I think I've blathered on enough for this one, so that will do it for this review, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.